I think we have to be clear that there are contending visions of what Europe should be within the EU itself. And this doesn't just mean that some countries want one thing and other countries want something else. It doesn't just mean that some governments are more awkward than other governments, that even within the institutions of the EU itself, there are competing visions of what should come next. The dividing line here seems to be between the European Commission, that represents the supranational entity within the European Union, where decision making is made above and beyond governments, and the European Council. And the European Council is the intergovernmental aspect of the European Union, where decisions are made by heads of state negotiating between them. And I think we saw the dividing lines coming into play even before the British referendum. That when David Cameron went on his one-man renegotiation tour back in February, trying to get a deal that he would be able to sell to his own Eurosceptics, we saw two different responses from two different EU institutions. There was a touch of theatre about that renegotiation tour as it was, but when the cast of characters changed, the message changed as well. Cameron seemed to do everything he could to be seen with Donald Tusk, the President of the European Council, because Tusk seemed to be taking the position that compromise was necessary, that everyone had to play nicely with one another, everyone had to be friendly, and that if the British wanted to ask for a slight tweaking of its relationship, then it should be given every chance of winning the subsequent referendum on that basis. The Commission, however, headed by Jean-Claude Juncker, was very keen to say that the referendum shouldn't be taking place at all, and that Britain could expect no special favours, that two-tier membership was not possible, and that the treaty obligations that Britain had signed up to were sacrosanct and should not be changed. And I think subsequent to the EU referendum result, we've seen that split being manifest in other ways. Theresa May has been on a whistle-stop tour of European capitals, and most of the heads of state have been very friendly and have suggested that an accommodation needs to be made. There are significant economic interests at home that are all pushing member state governments not to isolate Britain in the negotiations, that lots of European firms want access to the British consumer markets. Lots of European nationals still live, reside and work within the UK. They all want as much as possible for the status quo to be maintained. But the Commission has been much more bullish in talking about how inviolable the treaty obligations are and how cherry picking is not to be allowed.